All right, well, let's JCE our way back to Monday Night Raw, or is it just Raw? What is it officially right now?
It's Monday Night Raw. And what now? Netflix, have we decided that? I hear so many things. We've talked about so many things. They're going to stay on Mondays with Netflix.
I believe so, and that's a good thing.
Well, yeah, because it would disrupt our whole pattern if they wouldn't do that. So, speaking of disrupting a pattern, I'm going to skip over the next 20 minutes of this program. But basically, they had a 6-man tag to give Otis Tozawa and Model Girl a reason to be out there. I've got to admit, Model Girl next to I've blistered Johnny Gargano for being Johnny Same Face because it's just that bleh expression. He looks like Lon Chaney Sr. next to Model Girl. Her expression is always the same mixture of scared, confused, and puzzled.
Leona Cheney, the third.
Leona Cheney the third. Actually, she would probably now, because Lon Chaney Jr. was born about 1910, at least. He had to be 30 plus in the Wolfman.
You feel bad for him. I mean, great career, although
What?
maybe in his own head in his father's shadow, right?
Well, not only in his own head, but let's be honest, Lon Chaney Jr. was one of the shittiest actors in the history of motion pictures.
But he had a good career. He got the Wolfman. I mean, that's a role that everyone talks about to this day.
And only because of he was Joey Rossi. He was George Goulas. He got the shot as the Wolfman because of who his father was. He never attained the heights, the notoriety of Lon Chaney Sr. in his era, who was one of the biggest stars in silent films, the only horror star of note of the silent film era because of the Hunchback of Notre Dame and the Phantom of the
Opera, yeah.
Well, and all of he did his own makeup because he came from vaudeville and the live stage, and he was able to transform himself into all these different characters. If he had to be what was the penalty was where he was the legless man in the little wheelie thing, that they had back in the 20s for the legless beggars. He actually strapped his fucking legs behind him to the point where he was losing his circulation. Or for the Phantom of the Opera, he fucking extended his nasal openings with wire so that he looked more like a skull. He'd draw his eyes back with shit. And, that was his trademark, but he was one of the most famous motion picture stars of the 1920s in the country. And
Yeah.
Lon Chaney Jr. never got that. The biggest, besides the Wolfman and the horror genre, which he got playing pretty much off of his father's reputation, would it be not of Mice and Men would have been the biggest mainstream movie part he ever played, and he was a supporting actor at that point. He never headlined. I mean, The Hunchback of Notre Dame at the time was one of the biggest budget silent films ever made. So do not compare Lon Chaney Jr., my fine friend, to his eminent father.
Well, again, he was also really good as a hungover Wolfman in Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. Although I'm not sure he was supposed to be hungover in the script. Who do you think was a bigger star, Lon Chaney Sr. or Karloff? And again, when they brought him over, it was just Karloff. It wasn't even Boris Karloff, just Karloff, like a wrestling attraction.
Well, no, because in the Criminal Code, which was directed by Howard Hawks that was released either earlier in 1931 than Frankenstein or late 1930. He was still more of a supporting player. He had a name on the stage, and that he did have a couple of movie roles where they were just casting him because he was this odd, extreme facial feature looking Englishman that had theatrical background.
But with Frankenstein, it became just Karloff.
With Frankenstein, it became just Karloff, but that was only Remember in the closing credits, in the opening credits, they didn't tell you when Frankenstein was first released who played the monster. Did they? Or am I confusing that with something else, or is that the way you remember?
I don't remember offhand. Did you like in the old black and white films when they used to have the credits at the beginning of the film, not the end of the film ended, and that was it. You were out.
Yeah, boom. The the movie company studio logo, and it boom. Yeah, it's a much more linear thing to do, but for me, but you know me, I like things orderly. But nevertheless, Karloff became a bigger star. Not only with Frankenstein, which was a huge success, but through the 30s and into the 40s, and then he had such a longer career. I still think Lon Chaney Sr. for his time may have been, more famous than any of them, because that was a period of time where remember, there was very little radio in the 1920s, and there was no television. Most people, a large percentage of the American population, was going to the movies 2 and 3 nights a week in those days. So the silent movie stars, we always talk about this. It depends on how many people have heard of you as to how big of a star you are, not whether you're the best at something. And more people had heard of, Chaney Sr. than it took Karloff probably a couple of decades to build that kind of widespread notoriety, recognition.
Karloff may have been more of a Gus Sonnenberg than Chaney's Ed Strangler Lewis.
I think there you go. But still very comparable.
It's crazy. I used to know some old guys. I mean, I got to think a lot of them are dead now, but they would tell you these stories of, like, I took the train into Times Square and I had 25 cents and I got to see 3 movies, the shorts, they had live music, a soda, and a popcorn. It's like, what? It sounds crazy. It was the whole day. They just went to the theater, and the whole day the theater had things happening. You could just go in there and stay there all day.
Oh, and we should tidy this up before we get back to the wrestling. For a lot of the young folks out there say, well, who is this Lon Chaney Sr.? Then if he was so big, why didn't he stay big? He died in 1930, right after he had released his first talking picture, which was a remake of The Unholy Three that he had done as a silent. But he had throat cancer. He's only 40-something years old. And the rib of the whole thing is that in his first talkie, he had played 3 or 4 different parts and was mimicking voices as well as being the man of 1,000 faces. He played an old woman and did an old woman's voice and blah, blah, blah. So, now Chaney's going to do faces and voices, and boom, and he's gone.
Did you, I never asked you this before. Are you a Mel Brooks fan? I was thinking of the movie Silent Movie that
Yes. Yes. Young Frankenstein is our favorite over here at the castle, obviously, because it's a classic. But yeah, I love Mel Brooks.
What about Silent Movie?
As much as we've talked about the producers and Silent Movie, I've seen it. I haven't seen it in forever. Not one of my...
Because that came out in like 79. That's a movie you potentially could have seen in a theater. That's why I'm asking you.
That might be... I mean, Stacy got a DVD set of Mel Brooks, but I don't know whether in the theater might have been when I saw it. That might have been the last time I saw it. What were you going to say about it, though?
You think Shawn Michaels is trying to steal the Marty Feldman look? No, I don't know. I was just wondering, because if we're talking about silent films, I thought about silent films.
Werewolf. Their wolf. Anyway,